In the darkest recesses of the Solran Empire's dominion, the fortress of Zalnor loomed against a twilight sky. Its colossal spires reached upward, as though thirsting for distant stars. Narrow corridors, hewn from obsidian rock, twisted in endless turns, forming labyrinthine cells that contained the sorrow and fears of innumerable captives. Princess Cerys of Althea found herself locked behind cold steel bars, her regal garments tattered from weeks of confinement. She had been captured on the outskirts of Althean territory, betrayed by unknown conspirators. As she paced the confines of her cell, her thoughts focused on the telepathic link she shared with her people, a precious gift that had sustained her hope. Yet here in the gloom, even her telepathy faltered, weighed down by the heavy dread that hung in the stale air. The guards, faceless in their dull, metallic masks, marched methodically along each passageway, their boots striking the stone floors in unrelenting precision. At times, Cerys noticed a flicker of curiosity from these silent sentinels, as though they glimpsed her otherworldly grace and felt a twinge of doubt about their cruel duty. But none ventured to speak. Zalnor's fortress was a bastion of subjugation, the iron grip of Emperor Rain's tyranny tightening across the galaxy with each passing day. Despite her isolation, Cerys willed herself to remain steadfast, trusting that the famed Althean resilience might yet serve as a beacon to scattered rebels yearning for a shred of hope. She often felt the fleeting presence of fellow captives, minds that brushed against hers in telepathic echoes. Though the fortress's walls dampened such psychic calls, they were enough to remind her that she was not alone. Sometimes, she sensed flickers of empathy, and once, she could have sworn she heard a faint voice whisper her name. Loneliness came in waves, threatening to drown her spirit, but the memory of her home star, Althea's golden sun, lit an inner fire. In the hush of her cell, she made a silent vow. She would not vanish into the shadows of this empire. She would find a way to break free, far above, in towers designed to monitor distant star routes. Emperor Rain's officers scrutinized the cosmic maps that revealed rebellious cells. They lingered over each planet, tracking rumors of unrest. At times, they laughed at feeble uprisings, scorning any notion that the Emperor's iron-fisted rule might be overturned. Little did they know that within the depths of Zalnor's dungeons, a telepathic spark was alight, waiting for the right moment to blaze into a liberating force. Princess Cerys, the reluctant symbol of hope, bided her time. Night and day had lost all meaning in the fortress cells, for the corridors remained eternally dim. Cerys woke from uneasy slumber, startled by distant screams echoing through the passageways. A new batch of prisoners had arrived, fresh from some conquered system. She closed her eyes to quell her rising dread, focusing instead on the swirl of energies that coursed through her mind. The telepathic gift of Althea, though blunted, was not entirely extinguished. She probed the invisible field around her, and in that subtle dimension, she sensed minds ripe with fear, anger, and an aching desire for freedom. One presence stood out, intense, guarded, yet laced with sorrow. She directed a mental tendril of compassion toward it, hoping to kindle a connection. Almost at once, she encountered resistance, as though a wall had been hastily erected. Yet after a moment's hesitation, the barrier cracked, allowing her to feel the individual's turmoil. A man's silent fury and regret pulsed within him, mingled with a reluctance to accept help. Their contact broke abruptly, leaving Cerys breathless and uncertain, but oddly comforted by the knowledge that another strong spirit dwelled within these dark halls. A short while later, in a moment of startling coincidence, the guards unlocked her cell and hurled a new captive inside. He stumbled across the threshold, landing face first upon the frigid floor, breathing heavily. Before Cerys could speak, the door slammed shut, and the guard's footsteps receded. She bent down to help the newcomer stand, noticing the insignia on his worn jacket, the faded crest of the Solran Empire's military. Instinctively, she recoiled, heart pounding at the sight of the emblem that had brought so much despair to Althea. Yet something within her, an intuitive stir, urged her to keep calm. "You're Althean," the soldier croaked, glancing at the delicate features of her face. His eyes, gray and stormy, betrayed a lifetime of conflict. He looked ready to push her away, as though her kindness were an undeserved gift. Her telepathic sense recognized him immediately. This was the mind she had sensed moments before, the one brimming with contained rage and regret. "I am Princess Cerys of Althea," she replied softly, measuring his reaction. For an instant, he looked both startled and ashamed, lowering his gaze as if to hide an unspoken guilt. "I'm Jarek Cross," he said at last, clearing his throat in a raspy exhalation. "Or I was. I served in the Solran forces before I realized what horrors I was a part of." Thus began a fragile alliance between two souls who, on the surface, should have been sworn enemies. Uniting in adversity, they recognized that their survival, indeed their hope of saving the galaxy from the Emperor's tyrannical grasp, lay in cooperation. Cerys sensed the guilt beneath Jarek's bitter shell. In equal measure, he perceived her quiet resolve. Together, they would seize upon whatever faint opportunities lay in wait behind Zalnor's walls, forging a plan that might lead them to freedom. Cerys soon learned that Jarek had once been a highly regarded soldier, a specialist in infiltration and rescue missions. During his tenure, he had witnessed enough atrocities to fill him with revulsion. When he attempted to speak out against the Empire's cruelty, he found himself in a tribunal that branded him a traitor, sentencing him to rot in Zalnor. Now, his only goal was to escape and, in some way, atone for what he had done in the name of Emperor Rain. Their first days in confinement together were uneasy. Trust, after all, did not blossom swiftly between a princess whose world had been invaded and a soldier trained by her enemies. Nonetheless, necessity fostered cautious respect. Through whispered conversations, they shared fragments of their pasts, forging tentative bonds in the dark. In the faint twilight of the cell, Jarek described how the Empire subjugated newly conquered systems, stripping them of resources, enslaving inhabitants, and crushing any sign of rebellion. Cerys provided insight into the telepathic heritage of Althea, explaining how her people once practiced a harmonious culture, weaving mind speak into daily life to strengthen unity. "You say you can reach the minds of others," Jarek said doubtfully one evening, folding his arms across his chest. "Have you any idea how to break past Zalnor's psychic dampeners?" Her eyes flickered with an inner resolve. "The dampeners here are strong," she whispered, "but not infallible. I can still sense others, albeit faintly. We are not the only prisoners who yearn for liberation. If we can coordinate, if we can unify our thoughts, even for a moment, we might overwhelm the fortress's defenses from within." "A telepathic uprising," Jarek murmured, rubbing his chin. The notion sounded borderline, fantastical, yet he had no better plan. "We'd need a distraction, something to draw the guards away from our cell blocks. Then we strike." They began to conspire in hushed tones, detailing every nuance of the fortress's layout that Jarek could recall from his time in the Solran military. Their alliance remained secret, revealed only through coded glances and fleeting touches. The guards watched them with disinterest, not realizing that a princess and a disillusioned soldier were orchestrating a spark that might ignite the fires of rebellion at dawn, or what passed for dawn in the ever-dim corridors. Cerys and Jarek prepared to attempt their first telepathic communication with the other inmates. She closed her eyes, inhaling slowly, then opened her mind to the swirling energies beyond the cell. It felt like flinging a desperate cry across a chasm, hoping for an echo that would confirm she was not alone. Pain seared her temples as she fought the dampening field, but she pressed on, her resolve fueled by the memory of her father's gentle smile and her people's unwavering faith. At length, faint whispers answered her call, pockets of consciousness across the fortress, flickering like scattered embers longing for a gust of wind. Jarek, in his corner, could do little but clasp her hand, offering strength. In that moment, a ripple passed through Zalnor's walls, so subtle that the guards never noticed. A single word echoed in a handful of minds: unite. Days blurred into one another, but the telepathic bond grew stronger, weaving disparate prisoners together into a tapestry of shared purpose. Some were smugglers from the rim worlds, captured for daring to trade contraband weaponry. Others were political dissidents from the core planets, once vocal about the Empire's monstrous deeds. Still more were members of subjugated races, bound by chains of exploitation. Through Cerys' guidance, all found a common cause. They conveyed simple messages, times, signals, distractions. Whispers of a grand escape permeated the fortress's corridors, disguised as random mutterings or silent nods. The guards saw only broken spirits and vacant stares. Unbeknownst to them, a potent undercurrent of rebellion surged. In her mind, Cerys felt gratitude from those she connected with, and this sense of unity replenished her own fortitude. During this time, Jarek worked on the more practical aspects of the plan. He managed to charm a guard into letting him carry water buckets for their cell block, memorizing each hallway he traversed. In overheard conversations, he gleaned the schedules of patrols, the location of security terminals, and even hints of Emperor Rain's hidden laboratories deep beneath Zalnor. The soldier within him reawakened, but now, his loyalty belonged not to the Empire, but to its dismantling. One evening, when the fortress's artificial lights flickered ominously, a sign of stress on the power generators, Jarek and Cerys huddled in the corner of their cell, reviewing the final details. Their idea hinged on a carefully orchestrated riot at a precise moment. Cerys would broadcast a collective command to every sympathetic mind in the fortress. The guards, overwhelmed by a surge of mental confusion, would scramble to respond. Meanwhile, Jarek would slip free, sabotage the security panels, and open the cells. It was a plan that relied heavily on flawless timing and on Cerys' telepathic abilities being strong enough to penetrate the fortress's psychic dampeners. As the moment neared, fear tested Cerys' composure, and doubt gnawed at Jarek's mind. But they each found reassurance in the other's presence. Somehow, the knowledge that neither was fighting this battle alone made the task bearable. The next dawn, both awoke with hearts hammering, well aware that this day might herald either freedom or certain doom. Alarms split the hush of the corridors, a tinny wail reverberating through stone walls. Prisoners throughout Zalnor erupted into a semblance of chaos, some screaming or rattling their bars, while others lurked in silence, awaiting the signal. Guards raced from one cell block to another, their boots pounding the floors in frantic unison. The fortress's usual discipline cracked under the strain of simultaneous disturbances, scattered across different levels. Cerys stood near the grated window of her cell, head bowed in fierce concentration. A thread of blood trickled from her nose as she poured every ounce of her being into the telepathic wave. She broadcast a unifying cry, weaving images of freedom, unity, and urgent action. The dampening fields resisted, but her unwavering resolve beat against them like storm waves against a rocky shoreline. Echoes resounded within the minds of the captives, driving them to break their restraints, to riot, to fight back. Seizing his moment, Jarek lashed out at the guard posted outside their cell, the unsuspecting sentinel, momentarily dazed by the telepathic distortion in his mind, staggered forward. Jarek struck with swift precision, knocking him unconscious. Grabbing the guard's keycard, he raced out into the corridor, motioning for Cerys to follow. They sprinted through twisting hallways, passing cell after cell where confused guards battled throngs of prisoners. The uproar was deafening, the clash of metal, the shouts of rage, and the roar of determined hearts. In the chaos, Jarek found a security terminal, battered down the door to the control room, and scanned the guard's keycard on the console. A series of hisses and clicks reverberated throughout the fortress as bolts retracted from cell doors across multiple sectors. At the same moment, Cerys hunched at the threshold, closing her eyes one more time. She cast a powerful mental summons to those who could still hear her. Like a mighty gust, it ripped through the fortress, further confounding the guards, urging the captives to seize their sudden freedom. A tide of rebels surged into the corridors, wresting weapons from disoriented soldiers. The fortress's discipline shattered fully, and Zalnor's infamous reputation, for the first time in living memory, was under threat. By mid-cycle, the fortress had fallen into prisoner control in many sectors. While pockets of loyalist guards fought on, it became clear that the rebellion had gained the upper hand. Amid the swirling chaos, Jarek navigated Cerys through hidden routes to avoid the worst skirmishes. They reached a docking bay crammed with battered ships, some still space-worthy. With a small group of fellow fugitives, they commandeered a cargo vessel. The engines roared to life, and in a defiant blaze of light, they soared through the hangar's yawning doors. Escaping Zalnor at last, euphoria clashed with exhaustion aboard the stolen cargo vessel. The group of liberated prisoners sprawled across the cramped hold, some nursing wounds, others whispering prayers of gratitude. Cerys and Jarek stood near the cockpit, conferring quietly with the pilot, a former smuggler named Lyra, who had served time in Zalnor for black market trade that defied the Empire's heavy taxes. She was wiry and keen-eyed, her hair shaved close to her scalp. With a wry grin, she revealed that her illegal activities had often been used to smuggle humanitarian aid to oppressed worlds. "I got into this business to help folk on the edges of the galaxy," she said, tapping coordinates into the ship's nav system. "Emperor Rain calls us criminals, but I'd call him a tyrant. Where to now, Your Highness?" Cerys flinched at the formal address. In truth, she felt anything but regal at that moment. Her head still throbbed from the telepathic exertion, and the weight of her station pressed on her shoulders. "We must find the rebellion," she managed at last, wiping a trickle of sweat from her brow. "Rumor speaks of scattered cells across the galaxy if we unite them. We have a chance to stand against Rain's oppression." Jarek, seated beside her, nodded. Though haunted by all he had witnessed in his service to the Empire, he now found renewed purpose in the princess's resolution. "We have to move fast. The Empire will know we've escaped. They won't rest until they've recaptured you, or worse." Through hushed debate, they settled on heading toward the Outer Rim, to a planet called Dathan Prime. Whispers in Zalnor's cells had suggested that pockets of organized resistance congregated there, but their journey would be perilous. Imperial patrols swarmed the major hyperspace routes, scanning vessels for any sign of fugitives. Weary, yet hopeful, the band of rebels engaged the warp engines, navigating jump coordinates that might elude the prying eyes of Imperial outposts. As the ship slipped into the shimmering tunnel of faster-than-light travel, Cerys gazed out a porthole, recalling her vow to bring freedom to her people. Beside her, Jarek quietly studied star charts, already planning their next steps. Around them, the few who had survived Zalnor's horror committed themselves to the cause, bound by the memory of captivity and the newfound taste of liberty. They emerged from hyperspace in the orbit of a dusky, amber-hued planet, Dathan Prime, shrouded by swirling clouds. The world reflected only a faint glimmer of its sun. Lyra deftly maneuvered the vessel past drifting debris remnants of old battles. Jarek peered over the sensor readouts, frowning at the faint signals of encroaching craft. Empire scouts were present, as expected. "We'll need a stealthy approach," Lyra muttered, slowing the engines to a near idle. "I can mask our signature, but if there's a major outpost down there, we're in for some trouble." Cerys braced herself. She felt tremors in her mind, faint pulses of energy that hinted at psychic presence below. Whether they were rebellious souls or cunning Imperials was yet unclear. Carefully, she reached out, but unlike Zalnor, Dathan Prime had no oppressive dampener, just the natural swirl of many minds living their daily toil. Still, she sensed caution, fear, and a resolute undercurrent. A subtle relief washed over her. This planet housed a spark of defiance. They touched down on a barren plateau, far from the main settlements. The cargo vessel hissed softly as it settled on rocky soil. Venturing outside, they were greeted by arid wind, carrying fine dust that stung their cheeks. Scraggly plants clung to life in crevices, and the horizon was dominated by a chain of jagged hills. Without delay, they secured the landing area, mindful of potential trackers or local watchers. Two of their group stood guard at the ship, while Cerys, Jarek, and Lyra set forth to find the rumored rebel hideouts. Slogging through the dusty terrain, they encountered small encampments, mostly impoverished locals eking out a living by mining meager ore deposits. The people here bore the weariness of the oppressed, hollow eyes, guarded expressions. Upon catching sight of the newcomers, some retreated behind tattered tents. Others watched warily, hands on crude blasters. It wasn't until Jarek identified himself as an ex-Solran soldier turned ally, and Cerys gently revealed her telepathic gift, that any semblance of trust took root. A local elder, bent by age and hardship, directed them to a hidden network of caverns nestled in the hills. There you'll find the ones who call themselves the Dathan Liberation Front, he rasped. They're not trusting folk. Show caution if you value your lives. Cerys thanked him, offering a small satchel of dried provisions, which the elder accepted with trembling gratitude. Despite the bleakness, the princess sensed flickers of renewed hope in the villagers' hope that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy wasn't doomed to serve Emperor Rain forever. Setting their faces grim, she and her small entourage pressed on, driven by a desire to unify the scattered rebellion. The caverns beneath the hills were a winding maze of natural tunnels, dimly lit by solar-powered lamps. At first, the group found only storage areas stacked with crates of ration packs, old blasters, and medical supplies. Signs of clandestine activity were everywhere. Footprints, hurried markings on the cave walls, and half-dismantled surveillance drones. Deeper inside, they encountered a labyrinth of passages, some blocked by cave-ins, others rigged with primitive booby traps. Eventually, they came upon a wide cavern where several figures emerged, weapons drawn. Ragged uniforms and patchwork armor bore the symbol of a broken chain, an emblem Jarek recognized from whispered tales of the Dathan Liberation Front. Leading them was a stern-faced man, with a long scar across one cheek and a rifle strapped to his back. He studied them, suspicion etched into every line of his expression. "What's your business here?" he barked. His voice reverberated in the stillness, echoing off the cavern walls. A half-dozen rebels raised their guns, tension sparking in the subterranean gloom. Cerys stepped forward, her heart pounding. If they failed to earn these people's trust, they'd find little refuge on Dathan Prime. "We come in peace," she said, projecting calm in her tone. "I am Cerys, once Princess of Althea, now a fugitive from the Solran Empire. My companions and I escaped Zalnor's fortress. We seek others who oppose Rain's tyranny." A ripple of shock passed among the rebels. Jarek noticed a few exchanging startled glances, evidently. Cerys' identity was known from the tales of Althea's downfall. The stern-faced man's gaze flicked momentarily to Jarek's battered Solran jacket. "You bring an imperial dog here," he growled, finger tightening on the trigger. Jarek stiffened. Though such hostility was warranted, he couldn't help but feel an inward pang of shame. "I served in the Empire, but no longer," he said quietly. "I've seen enough slaughter to last a dozen lifetimes. I'm here to fight for freedom. Believe me or not, that's the truth." An uncomfortable silence fell. The rebels eyed one another, their weapons still up. At length, a younger rebel woman stepped forward. She had a datapad clutched in one hand and wore a bandolier of ion grenades. "I heard rumors of Althea's princess being captured. If you're truly her, you might be the symbol we need to unify the scattered cells." The scarred man lowered his rifle slightly, but kept his guard. "We've lost too many to infiltration," he said. "We can't risk exposure. The Empire hunts us from orbit. One misstep, and we're all dead." Understanding their plight, Cerys slowly extended her hand. "I'm a telepath," she explained. "If you permit me a moment, I can show you my sincerity, my memories. I won't delve into your mind without permission, but you can witness the truth in mine." He studied her with a hardened wariness. Yet something in her steady gaze and the gentle lilt of her voice prompted him to nod, albeit grudgingly. Cerys closed her eyes, letting the telepathic link flow. She conjured images of her beloved homeworld, Althea, its crystal lakes and lush forests. She shared her anguish as the Empire's battleships blotted out the skies, her capture, and her vow to fight back. Finally, she showed glimpses of their recent escape from Zalnor, revealing Jarek's defiance of imperial cruelty. When she withdrew, tears glimmered in her eyes, and a faint gasp echoed among the onlookers. The scarred man swallowed hard, lowering his rifle completely. A hush blanketed the cavern. At last, he extended a calloused hand. "I'm Commander Harrell," he said, "and if you're willing, we could use your help. Our resources are thin. The Empire's presence grows every day. But we haven't given up." Relief surged through Cerys. Jarek and Lyra, at last, they had found a bastion of resistance, a foothold in a galaxy seemingly drowning beneath Rain's tyranny. Together with the Dathan Liberation Front, they would plan their next moves, forging alliances and uniting disparate factions to strike a decisive blow. Over the next weeks, the cavern became a hub of clandestine activity. Cerys offered her telepathic abilities to contact small rebel outposts on nearby moons. Jarek convened with a few ex-military types who had defected from the Empire, plotting raids to seize vital supplies. Lyra proved instrumental in coordinating smuggling routes, her knowledge of backdoor star lanes invaluable. Step by step, they assembled a tenuous network, each fragment of resistance contributing to a larger tapestry. Commander Harrell, though initially cautious, developed a grudging respect for the newcomers. He recognized that Cerys' royal lineage could serve as a rallying cry. The rumor that Althea's princess still lived began to circulate among rebel circles, bolstering morale. Even on worlds that had never heard of Althea, her story resonated, a noble figure, imprisoned, yet defiantly forging her own path to freedom. Jarek, meanwhile, wrestled with the shadows of his past. In hushed conversations around flickering lights, he confessed to Cerys the guilt that gnawed at him. He'd participated in raids on innocents, blindly following orders. "I want to believe that fighting with you now can redeem me," he said one night, gazing at the rocky ceiling. "But how can I ever wash away the blood on my hands?" Cerys, her face etched with empathy, placed a gentle hand on his. "You can't change the past, Jarek, but your present choices matter. Each step away from cruelty is a step toward redemption." Her words, spoken with quiet conviction, soothed his turmoil. Though the memory of uniformed atrocities lingered, he resolved to do whatever it took to end the Empire's reign. If that meant risking his life on the front lines, so be it. Outside, the dusty horizon swirled in permanent twilight. Rain's fleets prowled the sector, occasionally bombarding remote areas suspected of harboring rebels. The inhabitants of Dathan Prime lived in constant suspense, scanning the skies for any sign of approaching vessels. Harrell and his lieutenants monitored scrambled communications, preparing to move at a moment's notice. Beneath the ever-present threat, hope tentatively grew in the subterranean caverns. Nurtured by the unwavering determination of a princess and her allies. One fateful evening, an encrypted transmission crackled through the rebels' makeshift comm array. The speaker identified himself as General Carrion, a prominent figure in the core world's rebellion. His voice was strained, laced with urgency. "We've heard that Althea's princess is alive, rallying supporters on Dathan Prime," he said. "If this is true, we need her help, and we must warn you. Emperor Rain has plans to unleash an abomination on the rebellious systems, something called Project Oralis." The mention of Oralis sparked alarm in Harrell's eyes, and Jarek tensed. During his time in the Empire, rumors of clandestine weapon projects had circulated, whispered in hushed corners. Rain's scientists were rumored to be experimenting with telepathic amplifiers, forging them into monstrous tools of subjugation. If these rumors were true, the galaxy's final hope might be on the verge of obliteration. General Carrion urged them to meet on a neutral world called Izeron, a planet known for its labyrinth of swirling mist. There, they could unify their respective forces and coordinate an offensive. "If we fail to act soon, all worlds will bow before Rain," he concluded. "We can't allow that to happen. I'll be waiting." Though the idea of venturing deeper into the galaxy, closer to the Empire's core, unnerved many in the cavern. The consensus was clear. This was an opportunity to forge a grand alliance. Cerys, despite her exhaustion from repeated telepathic communications, volunteered to lead the diplomatic endeavor. "We need every force we can gather," she declared. "Standing alone, our efforts will be crushed. Together, we might stand a chance." Commander Harrell committed a contingent of his best fighters to accompany her. He would remain on Dathan Prime, maintaining a stronghold to keep Imperial forces busy. Jarek, of course, would join the mission, determined to see it through. Lyra prepared her cargo vessel once more, though it would require some modifications to safely navigate the treacherous Iseron storms. As they packed supplies and loaded weapon crates onto the ship, Cerys took a quiet moment to walk among the rebels, offering words of gratitude and solidarity. Their eyes glowed with a determination they hadn't known for years. The presence of a genuine leader, one who cared for them, who listened to their fears, stirred a sense of collective pride. The time for clandestine whispers was ending. The moment for open defiance drew near. At dawn, with dust storms whipping around them, Cerys, Jarek, Lyra, and a select team of rebels lifted off from Dathan Prime's surface. As the planet receded into the distance, an undercurrent of excitement pulsed through the ship's cramped corridors. Ahead lay Iseron, and beyond it, the uncertain path to toppling an empire that spanned the stars. Hyperspace enveloped them in swirling streams of color, the ship rattling under the strain of its patched-up warp drives. Throughout the journey, they took turns at watch, scanning for any sign of Imperial pursuit. Word of the Zalnor prison break had likely spread across the galaxy by now, and with the princess rumored to be at its center, every scout ship and Imperial informant would be on high alert. When they finally dropped out of warp, they found themselves at the edge of Iseron's star system. The planet itself came into view as a ghostly orb wreathed in thick clouds. Lightning occasionally flickered in those murky billows, illuminating swirling formations that drifted across the planet's surface. Navigating those storms would be harrowing, even for an experienced pilot like Lyra. She studied sensor readouts, grimacing. "Sensor interference is massive," she said. "We'll be flying blind half the time." Nonetheless, they had no choice. General Carrion's message directed them to land near Iseron's southern pole, where a series of craggy outcroppings supposedly offered a safe haven from the worst storms. As the vessel descended, powerful gusts buffeted the hull, forcing Lyra to wrestle the controls with white-knuckled determination. Thunder roared around them, and arcs of lightning danced dangerously close to the ship's metal plating. Tense minutes passed like hours until, with a final lurch, they broke through the clouds to spot the rocky terrain below. Touchdown came in a clearing surrounded by jagged cliffs. Rain, cold and relentless, pelted the windows. The rebels donned protective gear and stepped outside, blinking through the downpour. Almost immediately, they found themselves approached by figures dressed in cloaks of woven fiber, designed to repel Iseron's acidic drizzle. One figure peeled back a hood, revealing a stern woman with iron-gray hair. She introduced herself as Captain Marisol, one of Carrion's top lieutenants. "You made it," she said, her voice raised over the din of the rain. "Good. General Carrion waits in the caves up ahead. Follow quickly, this storm gets worse by the hour." Despite the biting chill, the group's spirits lifted at the warm welcome. They trudged along a narrow path, the wind howling at their backs. Pools of phosphorescent fungi lit their way, casting an eerie glow across the slick rocks. Eventually, they reached a broad cavern entrance, where more cloaked figures kept watch with sophisticated scanning equipment. Captain Marisol led them inside, guiding them through winding corridors that opened into a hollow lit by portable lamps and humming generators. There, in the center, stood General Carrion, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an air of unyielding purpose. Cerys stepped forward, dripping water from her hair, and inclined her head. "General, your message reached us. We've come on behalf of the Dathan Liberation Front." Carrion's gaze settled upon her, a spark of intrigue in his eyes. "Princess Cerys," he said softly, I've heard many stories. Welcome to Izaran. We have much to discuss and no time to waste. Carrion ushered them to a makeshift command center, where rebel officers huddled over holographic displays. One screen showed a star map with blinking red icons, Imperial fleets, fortress worlds, and rumored weapon labs. Another displayed scattered green icons representing known rebel cells. The disparity in numbers was stark. Against Rain's vast armada, the resistance appeared as a patchwork of feeble sparks in an ocean of darkness. Cerys examined the star map, her brow furrowing. It's worse than I imagined. The Empire has spread further since I was first captured. Carrion nodded gravely. They tighten their grip every day. But our immediate concern is Project Oralis. My intelligence suggests it's far more than a weapon. The Empire uncovered something, called the Oralis Stone, on a distant world, an artifact said to amplify psychic energy. A tremor coursed through Cerys as she recalled ancient Althean legends of hidden relics capable of bridging minds or unleashing unimaginable power. And they plan to weaponize it, she asked, voice hushed. Jarek tensed at her side, remembering half-forgotten rumors about telepathic superweapons. Carrion confirmed her fears. If they succeed, they could neutralize every telepathic advantage we have. The Solran fleets might crush the rebellion within days, he sighed, gesturing to the screens. We believe the Emperor plans to test Project Oralis on Inara Prime, a planet known for its high population density and rumored to have latent telepathic lines beneath the surface. If the Empire completes the experiment, they'll roll out this technology across the galaxy. A heavy silence followed. Outside, thunder rumbled, as though underscoring the direness of their situation. Finally, Cerys spoke, her voice tinged with steel. Then we must stop them. We'll need every rebel cell unified ships, soldiers, strategists. We need to strike before they fortify their position. Though the plan was audacious, the room crackled with a renewed surge of hope. Carrion and his officers began charting possible routes, identifying essential targets, and allocating responsibilities. Jarek contributed his military knowledge, offering insights into how the Empire would likely station its troops. Lyra volunteered to coordinate a fleet of smugglers who could run blockades, delivering weapons and supplies where needed. In the midst of this flurry, Cerys took Carrion aside. "General," she began, voice lower, so only he could hear. "My telepathy might be key to countering the Oralis Stone. Althea's heritage includes techniques for channeling psychic energy. If they're twisting that power, I may be able to counteract it. But I can't do it alone." Carrion's gaze steadied on her. "We'll support you however we can," he promised. "But tread carefully. If Emperor Rain or his scientists suspect you can nullify their new toy, they'll stop at nothing to capture you again or kill you." Cerys nodded solemnly, fully aware of the peril. Yet her duty was clear. With the help of Jarek and the rebels, she would embark on the most dangerous mission of her life, to wrest the galaxy from the clutches of tyranny by confronting the Empire's deadliest creation. Izaran's storms showed no mercy, but within the caves, an unprecedented alliance blossomed. Over the course of days, starship captains arrived in secret, guided through the turbulence by Marisol's navigation beacons. Ragtag militias, weary smugglers, and volunteer medics gathered, forging new bonds under the threat of a shared enemy. Cerys moved among them, lending an open ear to their stories, and in turn, rekindling aspirations for a free galaxy. Jarek, for his part, spent long hours coordinating infiltration squads with Carrion strategists, explaining how to exploit the Empire's vulnerable supply routes. Each day brought new reports of Imperial raids on rebel strongholds or harsh crackdowns on discontented populations. Rather than sow despair, these reports fueled the rebels' resolve. Word spread of the so-called Liberator Princess, whose telepathic gift and unshakable spirit reminded them that Emperor Rain was not invincible. In hushed corners, some began to speak of her as the rightful heir to a legacy of freedom, a beacon that would guide the galaxy through its darkest hour. Hope, however, did not erase danger. Scouts reported an Imperial dreadnought lurking in the system, scanning for unusual activity. One stealth fighter even tracked a rebel freighter to Yseron's orbit, forcing the rebels to jam communications and destroy the scout ship before it could transmit the coordinates. The incident underscored how close the Empire was to discovering their hidden coalition. They had to strike soon or face annihilation. The final council of war took place deep within Yseron's cavern, where luminescent crystals clung to the rocky walls, illuminating tense faces. Carrion, Cerys, Jarek, and leaders from every faction stood around a makeshift circular table. The plan was simple in its concept, staggering in its scope: coordinate a massive assault on Inara Prime. Simultaneously, smaller rebel fleets would harass nearby Imperial sectors, drawing off as many warships as possible. With luck, the Empire would be unable to reinforce Inara Prime quickly. The rebels would land ground troops, storm the research facility that housed Project Oralis, and destroy the artifact or subvert it. If Cerys's telepathic intuition proved correct, as they prepared to depart, each leader offered a solemn vow to see this through, no matter the cost. When the meeting concluded, Cerys felt the eyes of the galaxy upon her. She inhaled, remembering the gentle breezes of Althea, the memory of her father's voice. "We do this for every world yearning to breathe free," she said softly, though her words echoed in the hush. "Let us be bold, and let us be brave." The mass exodus from Yseron began at dawn. Rebel ships of every shape and size lifted off from the storm-ravaged planet, their engines roaring, cargo freighters crammed with supplies, sleek fighter crafts armed to the teeth, and worn corvettes carrying squads of determined volunteers all joined the formation. Though dwarfed by the might of the Solran Empire, their solidarity held promise. Watching them ascend, one couldn't help but marvel at the patchwork unity, forging a single cause. Leading the main strike force was Carrion's flagship, the Starbreaker, a battered cruiser salvaged from old Imperial scraps. It carried advanced shielding technology, gleaned from black market labs, a testament to rebel ingenuity. Close behind, Lyra's cargo vessel, now outfitted with improved hyperdrives and modest armaments, prepared to carry Cerys, Jarek, and a specialized strike team to the surface of Inara Prime. For all their preparation, they couldn't entirely conceal the departure. Within hours, Imperial sensor stations picked up unusual spikes in warp traffic. Alarms undoubtedly clanged across Rain's fortress worlds. The rebels had gambled that the Empire wouldn't react fast enough, but only time would tell if their gamble paid off. The journey to Inara Prime involved navigating a labyrinth of hyperlanes, jumping from one obscure coordinate to another. Several rebel groups peeled off at designated points, launching feints or sabotage missions to draw away Imperial fleets. A handful of skirmishes broke out when enemy ships ambushed them, resulting in furious dogfights in the cosmic void. Yet the core strike team pressed on relentlessly, using to be deterred by the Empire's attempts to halt their advance. During a rare moment of respite, Cerys found Jarek in the cargo bay, diligently inspecting weapons crates. She approached quietly, watching the tension in his posture. "We're almost there," she said, softly echoing the mixture of hope and dread that coursed through them both. He nodded, exhaling a shaky breath. "I'm ready. I won't lie, I'm terrified we'll be outmatched. But this is our best shot, maybe our only shot." Cerys slipped her hand into his. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," she whispered, quoting an old Althean saying, "but the willingness to act in spite of it." Their gazes met, a silent acknowledgement of shared resolve. Then overhead, klaxons sounded time to prepare for the final jump. They raced to the cockpit, hearts pounding. Lyra initiated the warp sequence, and the swirling colors of hyperspace once again enveloped them. Inara Prime awaited on the other side. They emerged in a region of space, dominated by a cerulean star, its light bathing Inara Prime in a gentle glow. Floating in orbit were several Imperial frigates, part of a blockade normally assigned to guard the planet's research labs. Fortunately, The blockade had been thinned, likely called away, by the rebel diversionary attacks. Carrion's main force collided with the remaining Imperial ships, lasers lancing across the void, hulls shuddering under the exchange of cannon fire. Under the cover of this pitched battle, Lyra guided her vessel through the fray, weaving between bursts of plasma and shrapnel. A wing of rebel fighters provided escort, engaging any TIE like interceptors that dared approach. The planet below revealed an expanse of verdant fields and glittering seas, an outward beauty masking the horrors being constructed within hidden labs. With a lurch, the cargo vessel penetrated the upper atmosphere, friction igniting the edges of the hull. Cerys clung to a support beam, eyes squeezed shut as they rumbled through turbulence. At last, the shaking subsided, replaced by the hiss of pressurized systems as the craft glided through dense clouds. Below, the sprawling research complex sprawled across miles of grassy plains, ringed by energy shields and dotted with watchtowers. Jarek pointed at the console, which displayed a tactical overlay. "We'll set down in that valley," he directed. "It's partially concealed by hills. From there, we move on foot, under cover of darkness." The plan was straightforward yet perilous. The strike team, led by Cerys, would infiltrate the lab to neutralize Project Oralis. Meanwhile, rebel squads would create diversions around the perimeter, drawing off Imperial defenders. If all went well, the Empire's leadership on Enera Prime would be overwhelmed. If anything went amiss, they'd be trapped, cut off from escape by the shield walls. The ship swooped into a narrow valley, thrusters roaring as it touched down on a patch of open ground. Immediately, the boarding ramp descended, and squads of rebels, clad in dark combat gear, rushed out into the twilight. Cerys, wearing a lightweight exosuit, stepped off behind them. Feeling the cool evening breeze on her face, Jarek and Lyra flanked her, weapons at the ready. Ahead, the lights of the research facility gleamed like malevolent beacons, hinting at the sinister experiments within. With a silent gesture, Jarek led them toward the distant compound. Tonight, they would face the Empire's newest monstrosity and attempt to crush the seeds of unimaginable tyranny. Their hearts thundered in unison, fueled by desperation and the faint hope that their bold gamble might liberate countless lives across the stars. Shadows stretched across the fields as the strike team advanced in tight formation. They kept low, moving from hill to hill, using night vision enhancements in their visors to scan for patrols. In the distance, columns of smoke rose from smaller skirmishes between rebel guerrillas and Imperial squads, a testament to the layered diversions orchestrated by Carrion. Reaching the edge of the lab's perimeter, they found a massive energy fence humming with latent power. Guard towers perched at intervals, each equipped with searchlights and automated turrets. Jarek consulted the tactical readout on his wrist pad, highlighting the fence's weak points. "We cut power at the substation near that tower," he murmured, pointing. "It'll give us a few minutes to breach before emergency systems kick in." While Lyra and half the squad proceeded toward the substation, Cerys crouched behind an outcropping of rock, focusing her telepathic senses. Within the facility, she felt an oppressive presence, a pulse of psychic energy that tugged at her consciousness. It was as if the planet's latent telepathic lines converged in one spot, forming a nexus of swirling power. A chill crawled down her spine. The Empire was indeed manipulating forces beyond the ken of conventional science. Suddenly, the power grid flickered. Sirens wailed as the fence shimmered. Then deactivated, Jarek wasted no time, firing a grappling line across the gap. The team clipped onto it and zipped across to the other side in seconds. They dashed into the compound, footsteps echoing on polished metal pathways. Overhead, klaxons sounded an intruder alert, red warning lights bathing everything in ominous flashes. Before them lay a maze of corridors, labs, and containment units. Cerys led the way, following her psychic intuition toward the strongest point of energy, a central chamber. Along the route, they encountered squads of Imperial troopers in sleek black armor, Laser fire lit the halls in vivid bolts of green and red. The rebels fought back with tenacity, Jarek's skill in close-quarters combat proving invaluable. Cerys, though not a trained soldier, shielded her allies by projecting subtle illusions into the minds of the troopers, causing momentary confusion that gave the rebels an edge. At last, they reached a towering blast door, reinforced with multiple locks. A sign above it bore cryptic symbols, Project AURALIS authorized personnel only. The pulses of psychic resonance were so strong here that Cerys almost staggered, pressing a hand to her temple. Jarek and Lyra positioned plasma charges on the door's hinges. The resultant explosion rattled the corridor, shredding the thick metal plate. Smoke billowed, and the team charged in. Within, the chamber was vast, dominated by a massive device that hummed with crackling arcs of energy. At its center floated a crystalline artifact, shimmering with shifting colors, surely the Oralis stone. Dozens of cables fed into it, connecting to bulky machinery that ringed the chamber. Scientists in white coats scrambled for cover, while a handful of Imperial officers barked orders, urging the troopers to stand firm. And there, perched on a raised dais, stood Emperor Rain himself, clad in regal black robes trimmed with gold. His eyes burned with cold fury as he beheld the rebel intrusion. "So the lost princess of Althea dares defy me again," he sneered, lifting a slender staff topped with a pulsating gem. "Fools, you cannot stop progress." Cerys felt a shock of fear, but she refused to yield, even from afar. She sensed Rain's monstrous ambition swirling in the telepathic currents. Her hand tightened around the hilt of her sidearm. Yet she knew brute force alone couldn't triumph here. Somehow, she had to sever the stone's link to the planet's telepathic lines before Rain unleashed its power. Lightning-like arcs crackled from the Oralis stone, dancing along the machinery as the device roared to life. Scientists darted behind consoles, keying in final commands. Emperor Rain raised his staff, channeling the artifact's energy. A wave of potent psychic force slammed into the rebels, staggering them. Some cried out, clutching their heads in agony. Cerys reeled from the onslaught. She felt the stone's power as a twisted echo of her own telepathic abilities, magnified 100-fold. Nearby, Jarek groaned, struggling to remain upright. If Rain fully activated the device, they would be overwhelmed, their minds subdued, their bodies rendered helpless. She had only seconds to act. Drawing a trembling breath, Cerys steadied herself. Recalling her Althean training, she reached inward, searching for the wellspring of telepathic empathy that had guided her. Summoning every vestige of strength, she extended a hand toward the artifact. Her mind touched the stone's swirling energies, grappling with the Emperor's malignant will. Sparks flew across the chamber as the two opposing forces collided in an unseen arena of psychic warfare. Rain snarled, eyes narrowed with concentration. "You dare challenge me, Princess. Your bloodline's gifts are nothing compared to the might of the Empire." But Cerys pressed on, ignoring the pain tearing at her thoughts. She reached deeper into the stone, urging it to remember a purer resonance, a harmony that transcended fear and domination. Althean telepathy was rooted in unity-compassion, the binding of souls in mutual understanding. She poured that essence into the stone's resonant field, hoping to disrupt the Empire's perverse harnessing. For a heart-stopping moment, the artifact pulsed wildly, sparks flying from the machinery. The psychic assault lifted, giving Jarek and the rebels space to breathe. Rain's staff flickered, his grip faltering, but he rallied, pouring raw fury into the connection. Striving to regain control, the stone wavered between two poles, the Emperor's violent ambition and the princess's compassionate unity. The strain was immense. Cerys felt her consciousness slipping, on the verge of fracturing from the overload. Memories raced past her mind's eye, her father's gentle laughter, the fields of Althea, the horrors of Zalnor, the camaraderie of her allies. She clung to these images, forging them into a shield against Rain's malevolence. With a bellow of rage, Rain tore at the telepathic field, momentarily pushing Cerys back. He raised the staff overhead, the gem blazing. Energy surged toward her, lethal in its intensity. Seeing the threat, Jarek lunged forward, firing a desperate volley of shots at the Emperor. Ryan deflected them with a flick of psychic force, but the distraction was enough. Cerys, rallying her final reserves, hurled a single mental command at the stone: break free. The Oralis stone reacted with a magnificent flare of radiance, illuminating the entire chamber in rainbow hues. A deafening crack reverberated, shattering consoles and sending arcs of electricity surging through the complex. Scientists screamed, scrambling to shut down the device. The floor buckled, and overhead lights exploded in showers of sparks. In that instant, a colossal wave of psychic backlash erupted from the stone, rolling outward like a tidal surge. Everyone in the chamber was struck by its force: Imperial troopers, rebel fighters, even Emperor Rain himself. Most collapsed to the floor in dazed shock, minds reeling from the stone's unleashed might. Cerys felt the backlash too, but she clung fiercely to the core of compassion she had guided into the artifact. Her body trembled, her vision swam, yet she remained standing, bracing herself against a shattered console. Around her, the chaos escalated. Machines short-circuited, walls cracked. Overhead, structural supports groaned ominously, summoning a final effort. Cerys focused on containing the stone's rampage, coaxing it away from raw destruction. She sent a calming mental resonance, striving to stabilize the artifact's unpredictable energies. Gradually, the surges lessened, the arcs of lightning diminishing. The Oralis stone's glow subsided to a steady, pulsating shimmer, still potent, but no longer violently out of control. Emperor Rain staggered upright, leaning on his staff. Rage contorted his features. "I will not be denied," he hissed, raising a trembling hand to unleash another telekinetic blow. But Jarek, recovered enough to act, struck in swift retaliation. He lunged forward, slamming the butt of his rifle into Rain's chest, driving the Emperor back against a cracked console. The staff clattered from Rain's grasp. Breathing heavily, Jarek trained his rifle on the fallen tyrant. "It's over," he spat, voice trembling with adrenaline. Behind him, the remaining Imperial troops either lay unconscious or were pinned down by the rebels who had regained their senses. Smoke and sparks filled the air, and alarms blared throughout the collapsing facility. Yet before they could secure him, Ryan let out a ragged laugh, eyes glinting with maniacal intensity. "You think this ends with me?" he whispered. "The Empire spans 1,000 worlds, even without Project Oralis. I have enough fleets to grind you into dust." Jarek's jaw tightened, but he made no move to fire. The rebels rushed in, confiscating Rain's staff and restraining him. Cerys sank to her knees beside the stone, eyes half-lidded from exertion. In her exhausted state, she sensed the artifact's power stabilizing, no longer a puppet of the Empire's monstrous designs. Around them, the structure groaned again, signifying imminent collapse. "We have to move!" Lyra shouted, hustling the battered strike team toward the exit. Two rebel soldiers dragged Emperor Rain, their grip unyielding. Jarek helped Cerys to her feet, supporting her weight as they raced from the chamber. Sirens howled, and overhead lights flickered in a final death throw. Step by step, they made their escape, hearts hammering. Cerys kept one hand pressed against the stone, levitating it beside her with careful telepathic guidance, unwilling to leave it in the Empire's grasp. Beyond the threshold, they navigated corridors strewn with debris, flames licking at ruptured pipes. At last, battered and gasping, they burst into the open air under a sky streaked with dawn's early light. Behind them, the research facility imploded, showering the plain with dust and rubble. But the Oralis stone was free from the Empire's harness, and the Emperor himself was their prisoner. For a fleeting moment, a hush fell across the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of distant fires. The rebels had triumphed against unimaginable odds, and in the golden rays of morning, the glimmer of hope shone brighter than ever. For a few surreal minutes, all stood silent, processing the enormity of what had just transpired. Columns of smoke rose from the ruined lab. Faint cheers echoed across the plains as rebel squads converged, cradling it as though it were an injured creature rather than an object of cosmic power. Emperor Ryan, bound and kneeling in the dirt, seethed at his captors. "This means nothing," he hissed at Cerys. "My admirals, my governors, they will reduce your pitiful rebellion to ash. By capturing me, you've made yourselves the greatest target in the galaxy." Cerys met his glare with tired empathy. She sensed his hatred, his fear masked by arrogance. Yet in the swirling energies around the stone, she perceived a path forward, a way to unify far-flung worlds, to end the Empire's tyranny if they move swiftly and decisively. "We won't stop until every world is free from your cruelty," she said quietly. "Your reign is done." Even as she spoke, rebel comm units crackled with transmissions from orbit. Carrion reported that the Imperial blockade was in disarray, half of its ships destroyed or fleeing. Across nearby systems, rebel cells were rising up, seizing the moment to strike. Word of the Emperor's capture spread like wildfire, igniting revolts on dozens of planets long oppressed by his rule. In the weeks that followed, the remnants of Rain's armies either sought to regroup or surrendered outright, demoralized without their leader's iron will. Diplomats from countless worlds flocked to an impromptu summit on Enera Prime's outskirts, setting up a provisional council to guide the galaxy toward a new era. Carrion, Harrell, Lyra, Jarek, and other rebel leaders worked tirelessly, forging accords, disarming still hostile Imperial enclaves, and orchestrating humanitarian relief for war-ravaged populations. Throughout it all, Cerys remained the symbolic heart of the movement. She used the Oralis stone sparingly, seeking to heal rather than dominate. By projecting messages of unity across star systems, she reached out to oppressed peoples, encouraging them to lay down arms and rebuild. The telepathic lines running through Enera Prime resonated with her gentle guidance, reinforcing peace rather than war. Jarek, no longer lost in guilt, found purpose in constructing a new guardianship devoted to justice rather than conquest. His strategic mind, once used for Imperial raids, now served a noble cause. More than once, he found Cerys gazing at him with profound gratitude. In those shared moments, both realized that their bond had grown into something deeper, something forged in the crucible of shared danger and unwavering trust. Months later, a bright dawn broke over Enera Prime, illuminating a makeshift stage assembled on a broad plateau overlooking the once battered plains. Dignitaries from countless star systems crowded around, representing a medley of races and cultures. Crisp banners fluttered in the breeze, replacing the tattered insignias of the old empire. A hushed anticipation filled the air. At the center, Princess Cerys stood, dressed not in regal finery, but in simple, elegant garments symbolizing unity. By her side was Jarek Cross, wearing a ceremonial sash that acknowledged his role in dismantling the tyranny he once served. The Oralis stone rested on a pedestal behind them, its gentle glow a reminder of the galaxy's capacity for both wonder and peril. Commander Harrell, with the scar across his cheek, stepped forward to address the assembly. His rough voice echoed across the plateau. "Today, we mark the end of oppression and the dawn of a new alliance among the free worlds. Many have given their lives to see this day. We honor them by forging a future in which no empire can shackle our souls." Cheers erupted. General Carrion followed, his booming tone full of pride. He announced the official formation of the Starbound Coalition, a union dedicated to mutual defense, trade, and respect for each planet's sovereignty. The galaxy would no longer be ruled by a singular tyrant, but guided by a collective council ensuring that no voice went unheard. Finally, Cerys stepped up to the podium. Sunlight caught in her hair as she looked out on the sea of faces: leaders, soldiers, civilians, and refugees, all bound by their shared struggle. Emotion clutched her throat. She remembered the horrors of Zalnor, the telepathic calls of captives longing for hope, and the staggering risk of challenging Emperor Rain's monstrous reign. "This victory belongs to each one of you," she said, voice resonating with gentle strength. Every voice that defied tyranny, every hand that lifted another from despair, every mind that believed we could stand as one. Let us vow never to forget the cost, nor the preciousness of our unity. As the crowd roared in agreement, she felt Jarek's hand slip into hers. Their eyes met, a silent promise passing between them of healing, of continued vigilance, and of a future shaped by compassion rather than conquest. Overhead, starships soared in formation, a symbol of renewed cooperation. Across the galaxy, freed worlds set aside old rivalries, forging alliances that transcended species and borders. Though challenges would surely come, the specter of Rain's empire had been banished. The Sol-Ran tyranny, once thought omnipotent, had crumbled under the light of unity and hope. In that triumphant moment, as dawn's rays bathed the plateau, Princess Cerys felt the distant whisper of Althea's golden sun. She closed her eyes, sending a silent thanks for the journey that had led her from dark captivity to the threshold of an era unshackled from fear. Beside her, Jarek Cross stood tall, reflecting on the transformation of a lone soldier into a guardian of freedom. Their hands entwined, they faced the horizon, ready to shape the destiny of countless stars together. And so, a new day began across the galaxy, a day of freedom, of possibility, and of peace fulfilled at last with a happy ending to a story that would be told for generations to come.